Okay. Our next story we're going to be addressing is the case of Adnan Syed. If we don't know who Adnan Syed is, he was. It's going to be okay. We'll just give you a little bit of background on who he was in case you don't know. Uh, Adnan Syed or Syed, depending how you want to pronounce it, he was convicted 23 years ago of murdering his girlfriend. A Korean American named Hae Min Lee was her name. She was 18 years old, and she was strangled and buried in a park, basically buried in a park in Maryland, Baltimore, I believe it was. The police investigation somehow led to her boyfriend. Perhaps it was because he said that he would delete her and he would make her disappear. So the prosecutors relied really, really heavily on his friend, who said that he had helped Syed bury her body. And then they went and did some cell tower triangulations, and they placed his cell phone somewhere near the park around the time of the killing. He was 17 years old when he was convicted. Well, at the time that he allegedly committed the murder, he was 17 years old. The jury found him guilty of murder, robbery, kidnapping, and false imprisonment. He was sent to prison for life. We fast forward 14 years, and a podcast called The Serial started raising doubts about the facts of the case, mentioning other possible witnesses that were overlooked, and mentioning that they had never tested anything for his DNA. And you may have remembered that Kim Kardashian talked about him a lot, and a lot of other celebrities and things started talking about his case. And for the last year, the prosecutor's office was conducting a special investigation into this. And about a month ago, I guess it was maybe a little over 20 days ago, the prosecutor, the current prosecutor, said that they had lost faith in the evidence. And if you saw my last stream on this, you'll see that I was angry, and I'm still angry about this. And I said at the time, I do not know if he did it or did not do it. But the prosecutors at the time were hiding evidence, hiding witnesses, not doing their legal duty of disclosure. They basically did not give him a fair trial. I didn't care if he turned out to be guilty. I just think it's important that even someone who is clearly guilty, even someone like Taylor Business, who we talked about before, is given a fair trial. If the authorities are trying to take away your life or take away your rights for the remainder of your life, they must be held to the lawful standard of proving through a fair trial. A fair and unbiased trial, beyond a reasonable doubt that you committed whatever crime it is that they're trying to lock you up for. So on September 14th, prosecutors asked the judge to overturn Syed's conviction. They said that an internal investigation had uncovered potential involvement of two other suspects and key evidence that they had failed to provide to Mr. Syed's lawyers, and significant reliability issues regarding the most critical pieces of evidence presented at trial. They said that a new trial at the minimum should be granted. And so on September 19th, they let him go. Now, after they let him go, this is where we pick up this particular story. Once the murder conviction is overturned, the prosecutors had 30 days to decide whether to prosecute him again, whether to have a new trial. That leads to today's story. Baltimore prosecutors drop charges against Adnan Syed as last-ditch DNA tests exclude him. That is a huge, huge thing there. Adnan Syed, whose legal saga rose to international renown because of the hit podcast Serial, is free. In an abrupt move Tuesday morning, Baltimore prosecutors dropped Syed's criminal case stemming from the 1999 killing of Hae-Min Lee. Syed's conviction was overturned last month, but he remained charged with murder, kidnapping, and robbery in Lee's death, while Baltimore State Attorney Marilyn Mosby's office considered whether to try him or to dismiss the case. Mosby said Tuesday afternoon that her decision to drop the charges against Syed was based on never-before-tested DNA from Lee's shoes. The DNA test results, which Mosby's office received Friday, showed DNA from 4 different people on the shoes. None of them are Syed, Mosby said. Finally, Adnan Syed is able to live life as a free man. Dude has been in jail since he was 17 years old for 23 years old. What's normal? What's a new life? I mean, how is... Syed's attorney, Erica Sutter, said in a statement, "The DNA results confirmed what we have already known and what underlies all of the current proceedings, that Adnan is innocent and lost 23 years of his life serving time for a crime he did not commit." Sutter, who is also the director of the Innocence Project Clinic at the University of Baltimore School of Law, participated alongside city prosecutors in a year-long investigation. Together, the attorneys discovered 2 people they now consider alternative suspects in Lee's death. Both suspects were known to authorities all along, but at least one was not disclosed to Syed's defense, they said. Mosby, who leaves office in January and is under the cloud of a federal indictment, the prosecutor is that they're saying this is politically motivated because she's under a federal indictment, a potential federal indictment coming down here. And Syed's exoneration is not about her legacy, but about achieving justice. As the administrator of the criminal justice system, it's my duty to ensure that justice is not delayed. Justice is never denied, but justice is done. But justice be done. Mosby said, Tuesday, justice is done. Mosby on Tuesday reiterated her commitment to identifying and prosecuting Lee's killer. Well, they've only lost 23 years for that, haven't they? <sighs> 23 years later, they're going to start looking for the real killer. Though she would not disclose any details about the ongoing investigation, Mosby said her office's homicide division chief, Michael Dunty, is assigned to the case. With regard to Mr. Syed, the case is finished, Mosby said. The revelation of alternative suspects led Mosby's office to move to vacate Syed's conviction, with her prosecutors saying they'd lost faith in his guilty verdict. On September 19th, Baltimore Circuit Judge Melissa Finn tossed out Syed's conviction and set a 30-day deadline for Mosby's office to decide what to do about Syed's case. Mosby said last month that her decision on Syed's case hinged on pending DNA testing being conducted on evidence of Lee's killing. Before the last round of DNA tests in the case, the results of which were discussed for the first time Tuesday, the analysis of genetic matter collected during the investigation of Lee's death had been largely inconclusive. At the request of Sutter and Mosby's prosecutors, several pieces of evidence were sent in March to a California lab for touch DNA analysis, which seeks to test genetic matter left behind when someone comes into contact with something, and another type of test that aims to identifying male profiles. Those analyses were not available around the time of her death. This was back in 1999. DNA testing was just getting underway. The O.J. Simpson case in 1995 was one of the first high-profile DNA cases, so it's only been 4 years after the O.J. case. Mosby's prosecutors conceded in court papers last month that the tests hadn't yielded much, but they were hoping to analyze a few more pieces of evidence. Mosby said Tuesday those items were pantyhose, a skirt, and shoes. Police found the clothing on Lee's body, which had been exposed to the elements, but investigators recovered her shoes from her car, according to court documents. Only the black dress shoes, which were dusted for prints in 1999 but not analyzed further, had DNA on them. Mosby said she declined to say whether DNA samples from the shoes had been entered into law enforcement DNA databases. One of the alternative suspects in Lee's death has a history of SA of men and is incarcerated in a federal facility after a string of assaults in the Washington, D.C. area, meaning his DNA profile is available for comparison. It's not clear if the DNA of the second suspect is available for comparison. Mosby said that she would be prepared to formally certify Syed's innocence, making him eligible to apply for wrongful conviction compensation from the state if the DNA testing came back inconclusive or pointed to another suspect. It's up to Syed and Sutter to spearhead the process of certifying his innocence, Mosby said Tuesday. Sutter said Tuesday she'd begin the process as soon as possible. If Syed's innocence is certified, he will be eligible for significant financial benefits from the state for being wrongfully incarcerated for 23 years. Under the Walter Lomax Act, Syed would receive roughly $2.2 million for the years he served in prison. Compensation determined by a formula using Maryland's median household income and the specific number of days he was incarcerated. He's also entitled to free tuition and 5 years of health care and housing, according to state law. Gee, thanks. In September, Finn scheduled a court date for October 19th, exactly a month after she tossed Syed's guilty finding. The hearing in reception court Tuesday morning was not docketed in online court records. So then it just goes through here to say that after it was overturned, the Lee's family appealed. They were arguing that Mosby's office neglected to provide them with adequate notice to attend the hearing. The family asked the Maryland Court of Special Appeals to pause the proceedings in circuit court while the court considered their appeal. But just last week, Maryland Attorney General Brian Frost joined Lee's family in asking that the state's intermediate appellate court to put a hold on the Syed's case. So what this means for the family's appeal is not known at this point. But although Mosby declared that the appellate matter is moot in her remarks, there is no more appeal. There's nothing left to appeal. She dropped the charges. So yeah, I think that's it. And then of course the attorney who represents the Lee family. And this is the thing. This is the part of the story that's rough. The Lee family, for 23 years, they thought that the person that killed their sister and daughter was in jail, had been incarcerated for her killing, and that justice had been served. Now they find out 23 years later that DNA evidence exonerated him, exonerated the guy, ripping open these old wounds. And why it happened? Because the prosecutors acted in bad faith. The prosecutors hid evidence. Whether or not that evidence would ultimately have convicted him or led to a finding of not guilty is beside the point. They played dirty. The cops and the prosecutors played dirty. They hid evidence. They did not disclose evidence they had a legal obligation to do. And as the old saying goes, it's better that 100 guilty people go free than one innocent person go to jail. But Mosby apologized to the Lee family for their loved one's death, but dismissed the claim her office had neglected them, instead blaming Kelly. So yeah, there's lots and lots of blame to go around here. So what does this mean? This means that ADNAN SYED is free to go. They're just saying, oops, my bad. Sorry, we robbed you of the best 23 years of your life and kept you in a tiny little cell. Sorry about that. Our bad. DNA evidence now excludes you as a possibility. You're free to go. But for the family, again, like I just said, it means that wound is ripped open again. Sorry, our bad. We thought we had your sister and daughter's murder behind bars, but I guess we don't. I guess there's potentially been a murderer running around for the last 23 years, unless he or she was brought in and convicted of another crime. How much would that suck to be that family? To just suddenly get a phone call one day, oh, we're letting him out. And then getting another phone call 3 weeks later, we're dropping all the charges. It wasn't him. So sorry. Now we got to start over again 23 years later to try to look for your sister's killer, your daughter's killer, even though we've just admitted that there really is no more additional evidence out there. This is what happens when you get people playing dirty. This is what happens when you get prosecutors who cut corners, people who violate your rights to a fair trial. It should never happen. I don't care how guilty the person is or how obvious it is. This is why we're seeing the Darrell Brooks case go the way it is. He has a right to defend himself. He has a right to face his accuser. As unappealing as that is, as much as it rubs you the wrong way that he gets to stand up there and question victims in his ridiculous sovereign citizen way, that is his legal constitutional right to do that. And for the other people, for the innocent people that are charged, for other people that are charged, that is why we do it. We do it for them. And that's the way it's got to be. Play fair or don't play at all.